If you make a peaceful revolution impossible, you make a violent revolution inevitable.
Armed with tear gas and flashbang grenades, police sought to gain control of an angry mob of protesters in Oakland.
Tear gas and flash bombs filled this plaza where occupiers faced off with police, one of multiple clashes in Oakland tonight.
They tear gassed us multiple times all day today. All we were doing was marching. Nothing. We didn't throw anything.
Occupiers claimed innocence, but our cameras caught protesters hurling rocks, bottles, and bleach bombs. At least 2 officers were hurt.
And the poor police, you know, how can they deal with this? Very sympathetic to the police who are brutalizing people, and very non-sympathetic to these people who are like, hey, we're poor as heck and we're mad and this is being done to us and the banks are screwing over whole communities and our neighborhood's being destroyed and we're mad about it. And those are the people that the corporate media made the villains.
We felt that the deployment of gas was necessary in order to protect our officers and protect property around the area and to prevent any injuries.
Dozens were arrested, and by morning the situation was calm.
Protesters are just routinely depicted as like, woo, especially if you're in the Bay Area.
It felt more like a street festival than a protest.
But I think very few media sources really zeroed in on the actual significance of Occupy, which was the organizational form it took, which was the General Assembly. And like the fact that anyone could participate, and in their participation they would go through a process of democratization where they themselves and their voices were, the way the GA was structured, would be heard by everyone. For a lot of people that never happened before, and where what they said had significance to decisions of the group. And so that for me was the most revolutionary aspect of Occupy.
I mean, it's frightening to be in a place where, you know, you're in a situation with a community of people, some of whom you know very well. Many of my very dear friends were there, and then mostly a ton of strangers, clearly Oaklanders. And to be surrounded and just hawked. Police were doing really intense, intimidating stuff. I mean, Oakland, there's a huge, long history of violence from the police to the citizens, so that resentment hasn't gone anywhere. You've got this, you know, pre-militarized police force ready to go. They've already had training. A lot of them are traumatized from combat, and they're here now in uniforms being told to corral a bunch of people who knows what they told those cops about us before they got there. Those cops were, I mean, some of them were shaken and jacked up and ready for violence. And I just would look around and be like, really? Like, how could they be intimidated by us? It seemed kind of hard to believe. Police are an intense presence in any city, and if you have a movement like Occupy, and they're just on you with choppers and spotlights, and people are getting beaten kind of randomly, and they're kettling people, and that's an explosive situation.
There were cops on one end. We turned around, there were cops on the other end. There's essentially no way out.
We attempted to take a second building, but were again diverted and then kettled kind of at 7 p.m. In front of a YMCA, at least a good portion of us, and there were people kettled and arrested.
I hear more and more people saying, like, how are we going to deal with the police? You know, for the first time in Occupy Oakland, I saw people bringing out, they had garbage can lids with shields because these canisters are frightening, and you never know when one is going to come at you. There's a row of cops there, 200 more over there. A bunch of them have these tear gas canisters, and, you know, that Scott Olson didn't see it coming, I guarantee.
A veteran seriously injured during protests here last week is still recovering at a local hospital.
And then when his friends ran to pick him up, they shot another one at his friends while they were trying to pick him up. So it's like, wow, the gloves are really off here. And I just wonder how long it's going to take. You know, you look at places like Greece, you know, a lot of the sort of social unrest that's happening in Europe, and people fight against the cops much more intensely there. It's much more, Greece is really intense. And I just wonder if we're not headed down that same road.
The movement, is called like a moment because, now it's not really around it as like a mass form. There are still elements of the movement, committees like anti-repression committee, like Occupy Oakland Foreclosure Defense that are still doing work, and they're actually doing far more important community work and are being embedded into the community, and they're kind of laying the seeds for a future movement. So, kind of like the nature of social movements, they sort of fluctuate. Sometimes they come out of masses, that they're never spontaneous. There's always people working beforehand, sort of like out of sight. And that's what's going on right now. That's kind of the legacy of Occupy.